This is the Voice of Early Childhood podcast. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Voice of Early Childhood podcast. My name is Angelica Salinska. I'm your host, and today I'm joined by Carmela Garcia Manas, who is Headmistress of Miss Daisy Chelsea and PhD researcher at University of Dundee in Scotland as well. Thank you very much, Carmela, for joining us for the second time now.
Indeed. Thank you, Angelica. And thank you very much for pronouncing my name and surname almost perfectly, I must say. Perfectly. I truly appreciate that. But yes, second time, I'm very excited to be here.
Brilliant. So obviously, well, we know, but we'll introduce this episode to everyone else. And there will be quite a few episodes in this series because it's all about your research. So every single series, every single episode, every single week, I'll get the opportunity to pronounce your name. So maybe by the end of it, 6 episodes or so in, maybe 7, it will be bang on and perfect and spot on. So your research, which we're really introducing to everyone today, is around education for social sustainability through sociodramatic play. So Carmela, why did you conduct this research and what was your goal?
So my goal was to explore education for sustainability in early years education and to focus on those 2 dimensions that haven't been explored before, or they have been explored in a very limited way. That's a way to say. I've always been very interested in the field of sociology. Early childhood education is indeed my passion. I think is the best age, and indeed the brain develops it's 90% by the age of 5. So you can imagine how such a wonderful opportunity to be part of it, part of that journey. And of course, one of my biggest interests in life has always been sustainability. So yes, I wanted to get deeper, to get involved in the subject deeper and see how we can help the world to become a better place for all of us, but especially for the little ones.
Because sustainability is so much bigger than what we normally see it to be, and what unusual, I guess, understandings are of sustainability on that surface level. Usually it is the environmental side of things, and it's so much bigger than that, isn't it?
It is. I completely agree. We normally look at climate change and of course, the consequences that we are now seeing that are detrimental for our world are environmental consequences. We see floods, we see fires, we see lack of water, and so all the negative consequences. But what we have to also take into account is that these consequences, although environmental, mainly come from a core that is social. It comes from our way, or the way we have, or the path we have taken when distributing resources or consuming resources. It has come from that point, that social point of inequality somehow, and that's that abusive way of using resources, like if those resources were unlimited when they are not. So that's why sustainability is much more than its environmental dimension. It's also social and so economic.
Yes, and in your research, you really try to gain an understanding of how children see social issues. And you used sociodramatic play to gain that understanding. So I guess through that adult lens, really understanding children's perceptions, and the method you used is sociodramatic play.
Yeah, so as a teacher myself, I've had the opportunity to get involved in different discussions with children about all kinds of topics. And it's true that sometimes we see little children as perhaps less capable than they actually are to understand complex issues. One thing we need to think about is that all these issues, no matter how complex they are, it affects children, little children. They are aware. It's part of the daily lives.
Yeah.
Why are we hiding these topics from them? It's part of the reality.
And I can really resonate with that. Recently, I was at a conference and some of the delegates were really questioning when we were discussing sustainability. And in particular, we were discussing food play and whether it's right or wrong. And I do have quite strong views around that because I think any kind of food play, it's still food. Even if the food is expired, why did you allow it to, expire? Things like that. So we were talking about poverty and hunger and things like that. And some educators were concerned that we are exposing children to issues that are so devastating and stressful and just not very nice for young children. And we are essentially taking away that innocence of childhood. So how do you feel about that? Where do you sit?
So actually, there is a talk I hope to do for a conference in September that is called From Innocence to Influence. Yes.
Okay.
Which is very much related to this topic. But yes, I understand that it's difficult because what we do not want to do is to convert what is supposed to be a happy childhood into a less happy childhood, let's say, or full of worries. And there is there's a term that is used in education for sustainability called ecophobia. We don't want to develop that ecophobia on children. They are obviously aware of the different issues that are happening because at the end of the day, it's also affecting them. One day, or for example, let's take a look at last summer in England. We couldn't use water to water plants. We had a limited amount of water to water our plants, gardens. And so in London, it was quite a big thing, I must say. And this was because it didn't rain enough compared to the past 50 years, so we had to make an effort and limit the quantity of water and be careful. So as you can see, the children were affected by this. They were asking questions about this. So it's not what I want to say is just not about hiding them, but it's about giving them agency. So this is the problem. This is occurring. You must be aware of it because it's happening to you. It's happening to all of us. And if it doesn't happen, even if it doesn't happen to you directly, it will have an impact. That's what climate change is. This won't affect us directly. Well, it will, because although it doesn't today affect you directly, the impact will get to you. The consequences will somehow impact you in the future. So it's about giving them agency. If, for example, our children, we say unfortunately, we cannot water the plants today because there is a limitation in terms of quantity of water because it hasn't been enough. But what can we do about it? Do you think we can save some water from your water bottles at the end of the day when you empty the water bottles? And do you think we can use it to water the plants in the setting? And so that's what we did. And so they look at these subjects on a more positive note, with agency. Feeling that they can do something about it.
Exactly. Like you say, they can do something. I was just thinking it's really tackling these huge issues with normal day-to-day things, actionable things that they can do in the settings at home, things that they are able to have an impact on rather than tackling a huge issue. And, it's not about scaring them and making them worry and making them learn things that are beyond their knowledge currently because they've not built a foundation. We're not talking about water dams and renewable energy yet, and certainly not in a non-kind of child age friendly way. But it is about those small day-to-day actions, isn't it?
It's about that, yeah, and being involved and also being exposed as well. Being exposed. It's about exposure, and I think that take us to my research. What I wanted to do is to explore for little children, young children, to explore social issues through sociodramatic play, because sociodramatic play gives the children the chance to be exposed to situations that in other circumstances they won't have been exposed to.
Yeah.
And that's the way we learn to respect everyone's own situation, and also to understand that every action has consequences, and that not in a negative way, but in a positive way, meaning your actions also matter. Your voice also matters because you can make a difference.
Yes, and really framing children, ensuring that they understand that they have a place as citizens in the world, and ensuring that they have that awareness that, like you say, their actions have an impact, that impact on other people, impact on the environment, impact on society. And so I was going to ask, sociodramatic play, is that what we commonly know as role play in early childhood?
So it has certain similarities. So you can definitely say that sociodramatic play is a form of role play. It involves a drama. But it has a few differences. So sociodramatic play comes from a Romanian physician who's called Levi Moreno. What he intended to do is to create a form of dramatic play somehow that is more focused on the collective and where there is no script, just an argument to what the children are exposed, and they decide what to do, how to act, how to behave, and so on. And again, it's focused on the collective. There are three main phases of what sociodramatic play is, or social drama is. There is a warm-up, where in my case, my research, the warm-up is done through stories related to the topics I have chosen, such as poverty, diversity, and so on. Then after reading the story, I present the children with a scenario. This is the scenario. It could be, we have no water, there is no water in the school. What are we going to do? Let's go on a water walk. And then the children decide what to do. So the children will play their parts. And then there is a third part of these social drama sessions, which is called the discussion or reflection, where we all sit down together and talk about what happened, and I ask the children about their perceptions and perspectives on the topics we have discussed or played.
Yeah, that's so great to have that reflection. So important. I feel like it really consolidates their experiences, turns them into learning rather than just, an experience that they've had, something they've role played, and not really having the opportunity to unpick it, reflect on it, build on the experience, the understandings. And if you're reflecting all together, then you can all have something to add, different children adding their parts, and the adults as well, I guess.
You are completely right. In fact, not only myself have learned a lot of things with them during those 10 weeks that the program lasted, but also the teachers that participated in the research with me and that witnessed the sessions as well. So it was wonderful. It was wonderful to see that it was not only a one-way learning. It was more what we talk about in the last episode with Donna Clark, a process of mutual transformation, let's say, or per se, where we all learned.
Hiya! Just quickly, I wanted to ask a favour from all of the listeners and viewers. It would really help this podcast if you subscribe on the platform you are listening or watching on. This will help the Voice of Early Childhood podcast to continue putting out thought-provoking and reflective episodes with a range of guests. And if you are enjoying listening to this podcast, please do share it with someone else who you think would love it too. And of course, as always, we encourage you to share your voice too. If you have reflections, thoughts, and comments, please do share this episode on social media with your comments and tag the Voice of Early Childhood. Let's keep these thought-provoking discussions going. Thank you. I'll let you get back to the episode now. So it's very reciprocal, and you're both, I guess, almost like co-researchers in a sense.
Indeed, that was also one of my goals. If I want to somehow explore children's perspectives on social issues, I need children to be co-researchers with me. They need to take an active role on this for this to count.
And that's really supporting children's voice, isn't it? I know you spoke about children's agency earlier, and then we've got children's voice here in terms of them being active participants and co-researchers, and that plays a part in social sustainability as well, doesn't it? It's not just separate of we're giving children a voice and that's just it on its own. Actually, it's part of wider society in terms of children feeling like they have a voice now, and they're growing up feeling like and knowing that they can have a voice and can have agency in the world.
Indeed. If we have been talking in research and so in other fields such as politics and so on about transformation. If we want the transformation to happen, we all need to have a voice, and our voices, everyone's voices, need to be counted. And yes, we are at different stages, and obviously children are at different stages than you and I, Angelica, as well. But with that being said, what we should be doing is to perceive early childhood as a permanent social structure rather than a temporary one, where we see children as becoming adults, because they are not becoming adults. They are beings. They are beings, they have a voice, and they are part of our society. They are not on the way to grow into adults, to become part of the society. They are now part of our society at that very point in time. So it's about seeing early childhood as a permanent structural category, let's say.
Yeah, and not reducing children to being prepared for the next stage constantly. It sounds like your research, your goals, your aims are really entirely interconnected with everything else that is happening in the research and in the setting and with the children. So it's not just we are looking at social sustainability and we're going to do some research and we're going to have some findings at the end of it. Every single thing that you do in the research, every single element is also considering social sustainability through, the child's lens of their agency, their curiosities, their voices, the adults' participation as well. So everything kind of really comes in hand.
The adults' roles, yes, indeed. And sustainability has different definitions, and it covers the three dimensions that you mentioned: the economic, the environmental, and the social dimension. And although I'm focusing on the social dimension, I'm also looking at children's rights. And children's rights, by following the Sustainable Development Goals, are one of the sustainability goals from the SDGs, as you know. In fact, the fourth goal is quality of education, and if you look at the policies, it talks about children's rights to be part of society and to be counted as such by listening to the voices, by having the voices heard. So. Yes, I'm fighting for a lot. I'm fighting for young children's rights, for social sustainability, and for social transformation. But I think everything links beautifully. Everything is interconnected, and so the three dimensions of sustainability. It's impossible to talk about social dimension without mentioning environmental and economic, as everything
of course,
dependent.
And as we're talking so much about social sustainability in general as well, it's important to note that in your context of you're in a setting which works with the early years foundation stage, the EYFS, and that as the statutory framework doesn't really mention sustainability, does it?
That's a very good point, Angelica, and I think a very important one, because one cannot fight on its own. And although there are a lot of researchers, educators, and adults, children that are fighting for the very same things, we need policy and the government, the educational system to support us somehow. And unfortunately, at this current moment, the EYFS framework, which is the national curriculum for children from 0 to 7, unfortunately, sustainability is not even mentioned. It is mentioned in the national curriculum for primary and secondary education, but not in the EYFS. And this is where it's at. At a global level, we do have some successful examples, such as in Norway and Finland, but unfortunately, this is not the case for England. However, I must mention, and on a positive note, it is true that you could see certain links to sustainability in the EYFS framework. For example, there is the EYFS framework mentions the natural world in one of the areas of learning called understanding the world, where the children need to learn about the natural world, and this could certainly involve that environmental dimension of sustainability. Characteristics of effective learning, which is how the children learn, talks about active learning and engagement, which is also related to sustainability to a certain level. And last but not least, we have cultural capital, which is that recent addition from the EYFS framework in 2021. Where children are invited to or need to be invited to learn and explore the world beyond their own experiences. So to be exposed to, for example, take the bus if they haven't taken a bus ever, or just the small things, but to be exposed to the wider world somehow and to wider experiences. And this is very much related to social sustainability and so to my research. What I aim to do in my research is to expose children to situations that otherwise they might have not been exposed, such as lack of water or having no resources or having no toys. Things that certainly help them, as the results show, to develop that empathy and those crucial skills. And most importantly, to understand better that the world is not just what they know, but it's much bigger, much wider. And also one of my goals was for them to understand that although we are all different and the world is just too big, there is not such a thing as us and them. We are all one. We are all in the same boat. And so we should treat each other as we would like to be treated, as we treat ourselves, no matter how far you are, Angelica. And no matter what your situation is, we are here as one, because at the end of the day, we are sharing our home, all of us, our planet. So yes, this is very much related to cultural capital as well. So there are some positive sides to the EYFS, I must confess, and I'm hoping for the best. I'm hoping that sustainability will be at some point added into the national curriculum.
And you talk about this, you really unpick the EYFS based on your own knowledge and experiences and your passion around sustainability, social issues. So you're able to pick up on cultural capital and not on that kind of surface level, and more in depth and more explicitly linked to sustainability, and then the different areas of learning as well that you mentioned. But that's all based on your context, and you're doing a PhD in this as well. So obviously your knowledge is a lot greater than many people's would be, and certainly greater than potentially someone coming into early years and maybe level 3 qualified. So in terms of addressing issues like this with children, around social sustainability, exploring poverty with children, things like that you'll mention later on in the series, the role of the adult is so important, isn't it? And, like I just said, your context, your experience, your knowledge allows you to be able to see these elements of the EYFS and then bring children's experiences kind of together in a way through social drama, and then expand on them and bring in different resources and facilitate all these discussions and reflections. But that doesn't just happen for anyone, that's based on your, like I keep saying, experiences and knowledge. That means that there is that need for training, I guess, in early childhood around addressing such big issues with children.
There is a big need indeed, and it's quite complex as well, the topic. Social sustainability is not an easy topic. It's quite complex and involves more than one complex subject. I must confess, Angelica, that while I was doing this research, I also saw myself as not capable of providing children with the best of the knowledge, and I learned a lot, and it was wonderful. It was a wonderful process. Again, it was mutual transformation. We all learned and go on. But yes, I do agree with you. We need training in sustainability, not only in the environmental side, but also in social sustainability and economic sustainability, because if we really, truly want to support young children with these topics, we need to know a lot about it. And for that, we need training and we need support, again, from the educational system, government boards, and so on, different entities, because it is, as you said, a very complex topic. And I myself need training as well. I learn a lot, thankfully, during this research. But as you said, every teacher and so adult needs training, because sometimes we look at the teachers as the sole facilitators and guides, and there is an important aspect that also shows in my research, in the analysis, that is the role of the parents. And the children, at the end of the day, when they are discussing and exploring these social issues, they are bringing personal experiences with them.
Yeah.
This comes from the parents. And so not only educators, but we all need some training. We all need a little bit more knowledge and perhaps exposure even to better understand these topics, and so to better guide the children. Because at the end of the day, we are there to guide. It's a two-way process. We need to be open-minded. And truly, Angelica, if you see the responses of these little children to big, complex issues, you would say, okay, why are not you a candidate in the next elections? I mean, look at you. But yes, training is certainly needed, and not only in environmental sustainability, but in all dimensions of sustainability.
And as you kind of mentioned that, candidates in elections, and I know we talked about not seeing children as just future adults, but actually, if we do think about it, we are raising future politicians and scientists. So it is so important to be able to address these issues with children early on, and not just when they get into primary school and secondary, and then we start to build it. Really goes back to what you mentioned before, building empathy, and that needs to be built so early on and not when they're 5, 6, 7 years old.
Yes, that's completely right, for two main reasons. The first one is because they are already experiencing this issues one way or the other. So they are ready. Second one is because they are very curious and keen to discuss issues. When I have told during my research, when I talk with them, I ask them questions. They were not only sharing the personal experiences with interest and enthusiasm, but they were also curious. They were asking very valid questions, and lots of them. And so some of them I could answer, some of them I could not. I must be honest as well. Again, back to training. But also the most important thing to remember as well is that in terms of social issues, we have, for example, one of the topics is diversity. If we think of different forms of races, for example, we are talking about things that are formed by society. Children are not naturally born into different topics. This develops with time. And so young children become aware of the differences, for example, between each other since a very early age. Since research shows, since they are 6 months in the very early way. Yes, I was very surprised. But I could certainly see in my research that children are very interested and very aware of the differences in terms of not only skin color, but hair, languages, cultures, and so on. So that's why it is important, because those social issues that come afterwards, or we think come afterwards, they have a beginning. And the beginning is at their time, is in early childhood. It's not afterwards. And so their understanding doesn't build afterwards. It has a beginning, and the beginning is not in primary, it's in early childhood. And so that's why it's very important. So in order to tackle these forms of hate, that are at the end of the day built by conceptions, and it's not natural us. So yes, it's important to develop empathy, but also awareness that there are other perspectives, viewpoints, and that tolerance and respect towards them, to understand it better when the time comes.
Yeah, to really challenge, I guess, before we have to, I was going to say challenge misconceptions from the very beginning, but actually before we have to intervene and challenge any misconceptions, obviously children are exposed to so many different people, so many different situations and things around them at such a young age. So they will have different perceptions of the world, stereotypes built up already and things like that. So it is important to put in the work to ensure that we don't reinforce anything that is, negative, and that we challenge any misconceptions, but also ensuring that we don't allow any kind of misconceptions and stereotypes to form in the first place, or at least squash them as soon as possible. Like you say, 6 months onwards from birth. And it all really begins with the parents and families as well, doesn't it? And that is pre-birth of working with parents too, I guess.
Yes, indeed. And we also have to take into account that the children sometimes want, and that's another thing I found, children sometimes won't speak out, especially when they are very young, because if you think of it, the younger, the more dependent on the adult they are.
Mm-hmm.
From survival, such as feeding and sleeping, to every single little thing, walking and so on. And they are aware of this dependency. So they will tend, and that's one of the results that came from the research, they will tend to perhaps conform to what the teacher thinks or says, even if they feel that is unfair or not just. So we have to also make sure that we give them that voice to speak out if they feel that is not right, that is wrong, in order to break down with those misconceptions and stereotypes. We have to also make sure not only give them information about what other perspectives may look like, and our differences that makes us beautiful and our world rich, but also that they have the power to speak out and that their voices are being heard, because that's when they will speak out.
Well, we're beginning to unpick, and we're discussing such big issues. It's so interesting to hear how all of this plays out in your research with children in the context that you're in. So that's something that you will go into in the upcoming episodes. So just for context for everyone, your research was based on 10 sessions across 10 weeks. Would you like to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so the program was developed in a private nursery school in central London. I'm also going to mention the context because I believe it's very important, not only during the sessions and in the results, but also before planning the sessions. I took into account context such as, for example, the children I will be working with come from a privileged background. So what do I think they need or they will benefit from in terms of social sustainability? So just to take this into account, the program lasted for a summer term, which was 10 weeks. And every week there was a social drama session pre-planned by myself that started with a warm-up, so a story related to the topic. They would be role-playing in the social drama session, and then followed by a discussion with the children about the topic and with the role play and questions such as why, which we absolutely adore and love. After this will last for 10 weeks. What I added from the second week, as I saw that the children were behaving and acting differently when the adults were present, after seeing these, after observing these, I decided to add a second social drama session every week that will be exactly the same than the first session, but completely child-led, meaning the setup will be there, the teachers will be next door, almost invisible, although I tell you that we were taking care of the little pies and truly looking after them, but so they could feel that there were no adults, and we certainly saw a difference in their actions and behaviors towards each other and towards the topics, which also
so interesting.
Shed some light, yes, on social sustainability as well, the influence of the adult authority figure. So yes, 10 weeks, 2 social drama sessions, both the same, one adult-led per se, or at least pre-planned, and the second one completely child-led.
It's going to be so interesting to hear all of your findings, and I'm sure the viewers, the listeners, are going to really be able to, I guess, relate to some parts, and and look at the different themes that you've identified and think, oh, actually, this is something that I'm really interested in. I really want to dig my teeth into this. But overall, the whole research, it's going to be really interesting to hear, every single theme, and then the overall kind of findings of, okay, so what does this all mean? What can we do? Where can we go with this? We already mentioned some ideas, I guess, in terms of training, in terms of policy and things like that. So it's going to be interesting to look at all the details, but also at the end of the series, kind of the overall picture as well. Why is this important? What impact does this, or can this have further?
Early childhood education, indeed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So for everyone who is listening, in the next episodes and articles, Carmela will share the different themes that emerge throughout the research. And you can find the first introductory article in this episode description. And you can also find out more about Carmela's work by taking a look at the article and podcast episode that has already been released, which looks at life skills over academic achievement. So that's everything to have a look at for now, and you can look forward to the next episode in this series. Thank you very much, Carmela, for sharing your research and giving us such a great introduction and really unpicking some of those important, important issues to begin with, and not just, defining certain key terms, but really looking in depth at the bigger issues in society.
It was a pleasure, Angelica. Thank you, and see you in the next episode.
Yes, fantastic.